So, hello. This is a really special session today on the moon, and I'm really excited about it. So, yeah, the moon is, we've sort of been following the moon because if you've been with me on Soul Tribe in this astrology group, then we've been following Venus and the moon. Actually, I've been doing it for about 3 years now, but more following Venus. And then it just felt like that was coming to completion, at least as far as this group goes. And then I really wanted to follow Black Moon Lilith and yeah, Black Moon Lilith and the moon. So and that felt Black Moon Lilith felt like more exciting in a way than the moon, because I've been an astrologer for such a long time. It feels like the moon is so familiar, and yet it kept on calling, and so decided to do it, and it's just perfect really because at the moment, we're in the transit of the 37th gene key with the sun. And this is all to do with the mother. And the moon is the mother in astrology. And we're going to be looking at a collage. The artist Milena Bianga, who's part of our group, that really embodies this relationship between mother and daughter in this case. And the nurturing of the mother, which is what the moon signifies in our astrology. So it feels actually really important to know about our moon in astrology because, so for example, the phase of the moon that we're born at is very important. It's like a large part of our energy imprint, and that's the relationship between the sun and the moon. So that alone is really good. And then through this process, we can find out about our the moon, which sign it's in, which house it's in, and also what gene key it's in. In our gene keys profile, the attractor field is the design of our moon, which is around 88 days before we were born. There's this imprint. And there's some interesting human design things that we might actually do this year that Kim Gould has developed, like dream HD charts to do with our moon. So there's all kinds of ways we can look at it. And if you're following the dream arc in the gene keys, the moon is the access to the subconscious and the dreaming. So there's all kinds of exciting ways we can explore it in the coming year. Okay, so what I'm going to do is share the presentation. I'll go through that, and then there'll be time to share afterwards. Okay. Let's go back to the beginning. Okay, so moon mysteries. I've used this picture to start. I don't know who the artist is, but one of the things we're going to be looking at is the Black Moon Lilith and the moon. So there's this immediate theme of dark and light because Black Moon Lilith is a gravitational point of our moon and the earth. So we're going to be looking at the dance of these three bodies woven in through looking at other major things happening in the year and asteroids. But the theme of light and dark is going to be really important. So I like this painting. As I said, I don't know who did it, but it's got pomegranates on the black one. So she's like Persephone in the underworld. And this one has apples. So there's this light and dark. Okay, so this is Under the Milky Moon by Milena Bianga. Um, and so she's explored the moon as a light and a dark mother. And the moon itself is a breast coming down. And then you have these nebula of the veil. It connects with the star Cygnus, which is the swan. That star comes up a lot for me, actually, Cygnus. And if you look at Nut, or the night sky, the Milky Way, the Egyptians called her Nut. And where Cygnus is would actually be her womb space. So she has a connection to the mother goddess in that as well. And yeah, it's really amazing timing with this. And I love the fox here. And this orchid looks very much like female genitalia. And yeah, maybe Milena can say some more in later on. But it feels like it embodies so many of the themes. And if you're doing the 40-day meditation at the moment, we're really delving deeply into the mother and the child healing as we go through the 37 in our Kundalini yoga. A days to say a days is the mantra we're working with. Okay, so the waxing and waning moon. So the moon is so familiar to us. Sometimes it's kind of harder to do things that are so familiar. And one of the ways I really got into the moon, and I'm an avid gardener, is to look at the moon in terms of vegetation cycles. So that's one of the ways I tune into the moon. Like I've just done my seeds, my first lot of seeds. So I'll sow my seeds at the new moon, and then it's good to harvest at the full moon when the plants are really full of energy. So I do try and like stick to that. But I think because they're so familiar, they can help us see how close we are to the moon as well. So let me go through this. So what we have first of all is the new moon. In astrology, if you looked at a chart in the new moon, the sun and the moon will be at the exact same position in the zodiac. So this is the seed for the next month ahead. And so obviously we call this the new moon. And I've put a key word as well. And my key word for the new moon is innocent. So if you're born at the new moon, you have this beautiful kind of innocent, fresh, what's going to happen energy about you. Okay, so then we have the waxing phase. So this is the first part of the moon phase as the moon moves away from the sun, actually going the other way in the zodiac, then this is the waxing moon. And so that waxing crescent moon, you'd associate as that first shoot that comes up. And in my little seeds, I've planted some tomato seeds and basil, and you can just see the tiny little shoots coming up, but you would have no idea what on earth that plant was at this time unless I remembered what I'd actually sown. So the shoot is about this fresh new growth, but the growth is still hard to say what it actually is yet. Now, the first quarter moon, this is when the moon is 90 degrees away from the sun. And when planets are at 90 degrees, it's called a square in astrology. And it's a challenging aspect. So the first challenging moon phase to be born at. I mean, they could all have their challenges in a way, but the first quarter moon is known for being a crisis moon, if you like. And this is where the plant is, you start to see what it is, and most plants will go through a kind of struggle to survive at this point. You know, they might die from being put out too soon, or that's often how I kill them anyway. So it's a time where you have to be really careful with plants to get them from that really small phase to being able to live outdoors, for example, and become a full-grown plant. But you have this thing, oh yes, it's a rose, or yes, it's a cabbage, or whatever. So this moon is really about finding purpose. It's about taking the bull by the horns and taking charge of your life. And many people, I'm born in this moon phase, will have found themselves working or in crisis a lot during their lives, because it is this kind of crisis of life energy behind it. So then we get right close to the full moon. You know, we can see that light coming. And this is when the flower starts to bud. So it's the budding phase, and it's about the seeker. Like, we see the light, we want to find out more, but we're just before that stage of illumination. So people born at this phase are often really huge seekers of light or knowledge or something. You know, they really have this passion for seeking. And this is called the waxing gibbous phase as we approach the full moon. Then we have the full moon itself, which is the flowering of consciousness. It is the illumination of the sun as it shines fully on the moon. And people born in this phase are usually very good at manifesting. So things come easily to them. They they flower easily. So if you think of someone born in the seed phase or the waxing crescent phase, things might not reach fruition very often, because the soul wants to experience the newness all the time. So you can see quite a marked difference. And obviously there's other things in the chart that might mean this doesn't count for you. Like, you might ever be born under the new moon, but you have a really fantastic Saturn, which helps you persevere and create form. So it's not kind of definitive what I'm saying here, but there's definitely, this energy is important. Okay, so having reached the full moon, we then go into the waning moon. So here we go into the waning gibbous moon. And this is all about bearing fruit. So the flowers turn into fruit. And so you just begin to see the fruit. It might not be ready to eat, like you might have hard apples on the tree, for example. And then, okay, so I've put for this phase fulfillment. So you've reached the harvest. You know, you've created things in the world. Maybe they're books or they're paintings, and you want to, like, you feel fulfilled. It feels complete. Maybe not completely because it's not ripe yet, but there's this feeling of, you know, having bared fruit, basically. Then we go into the last quarter moon. So now the moon is 270, I think it is, degrees. 270 degrees from the sun. So at full moon, it's 180 degrees. And then the third quarter moon is 270 degrees. So it's a square again, but from the other side, if that makes sense. It's the waning square. And the crisis here is about completion. Everything's come to harvest. We take the vegetables, we take the fruit, we complete our book or whatever we're doing. And then there's nothing, there's a space. And we know that the death cycle has to come. So this is the crisis point, is the realization that this cycle has to die off. And I think this one is interesting. I've done a lot of people with quite heavy family karma born at this phase, almost as if they're shedding like the karma of their whole family through this phase. And then finally, we have the waning crescent moon, the dying back. And I've called this magic because you know, the traditionally magic was done in the dark moon phase, is said to be the most potent for magic. So even though potentially it's the hardest one because it's dying back, it is that black part of the moon that you really get if you are born at this phase of the cycle. And then it all begins again at the new moon. So what we will be doing this year is each week when there is an astrology class, we'll be looking at what's going on with the moon. So we'll look at all these cycles as we go. And we have some pretty amazing solar eclipse coming up in March. So we can really zone in on that as one of our first moon experiences we're going to do. Okay, so this is the chart for today, and it kind of gives us an imprint of, it's called a horary chart, where you go on an event and the event gives you a blueprint. So this is, through intention, a blueprint of the year ahead of what the moon might like to share with us. So there's some pretty lovely things going on. Firstly, that the moon is stationary in Cancer today. It's been going retrograde for about a month, and now it's turning back. And it's in gene key 53, which has to do with immaturity, expansion, and abundance. And it feels like a really important gene key. This issue of immaturity has come up a lot. And maybe if we think of it through the moon, we have to allow the full cycle to mature things. And so that's another thing to say, is whatever phase we're born at, we can actually get into the rhythm of the moon so that we go through all these phases. So we begin, we come to fruition, and we release. So this is part of why we would follow the moon, is we would get into this way of living and, you know, really tune into the rhythm of the moon, the water in our body, the water on the planet. I'm just looking at the sea out here. A cormorant just went into the sea as I said that. So yeah, there's lots of reasons to follow the moon. This is really powerful, what's going on today, because we've talked about in some of the other classes we've done recently, this incredible lineup of energy in Pisces at the moment. So we have Ceres, the mother goddess. Apart from the moon, she is the one who is also the mother energy. We've got Sun, Mercury, Saturn, and then we have the North Node and Neptune are exactly conjunct today at 28 degrees of Pisces, which is gene key 25, which has to do with moving from constriction to universal love. So this is a very deep love energy. In the Gene Keys, Richard Rudd says the 25 is the source of love. And so very powerful for, North Node is our karmic destiny. Neptune is this very like expansive spiritual planet. So we can really tune into these oceanic energies here. I'm just going to briefly brush over Venus. We're going to do Venus next week as her retrograde begins next Sunday, the 2nd, her 40-day retrograde. And she's in Gene Key 21 at the moment, which is all about honor. And so this is where her retrograde will begin in the 21. So these are wonderful themes: honor, universal love, coming into maturity so that we can expand. If any of you are doing my Holy Grail course with Matthew, these energies are just like, whoa, so perfect for it. It's amazing. Okay. Couple of other things. Pluto and Pallas Athena are exactly conjunct. So this is the transformation of the Aquarian warrior goddess energy. So Pallas Athena is this incredible intelligence, this like confidence and power, to not be oppressed by masculine patriarchal energy. And so she can enable us to break free into this new Aquarian age of equality, which is the gift of the sun today in the 37 is the gift of equality. So that's really powerful for that gift. And then looking at the moon, so just to show you, this is what the crescent gibbous, the waning crescent moon, or the waning gibbous moon. So we can see here the moon is in Capricorn. It's in Gene Key 61, line 3, which has to do with sanctity and sanctuary. This is a real powerful, like creating a moon temple energy. I'm very excited it's there today. And you can see it's pretty close coming up to the sun here. So yeah, it's a couple of signs on because the sun's there in Pisces. But it's going to be the new moon in a couple of days, maybe tomorrow. I can't remember exactly. I should know that, shouldn't I? But yeah, so but that's where that's what it looks like when we're in the waning crescent moon. Okay, so I mentioned coming up, we've got this amazing total lunar eclipse happening. I'm going to go into that more in the week before it, but just to kind of alert you that we've got a big moon event on the horizon. It's a total lunar eclipse in the Americas. Here in Europe, it'll be a partial for us. I'm not sure if you'll see it in Eastern Europe, but I know it's a partial here in Britain. And it's in this very powerful Piscean gene key, 36 line 2. So you can see here the moon, sorry, the sun is in Pisces, the moon is in Virgo, and it's amidst all this, like the North Node, Neptune. You can see Saturn is exactly almost like 1 degree away from the conjunction. So it's going to be very, very powerful. So here the sun is in the 36 and the moon is in Gene Key 6. So this is compassion and peace. I mean, don't we just need those things in our world right now? And this portal is opening to receive those gifts, those siddhis. Okay, so I know about this Metonic 19-year moon cycle because I spent quite a lot of time on the Isle of Lewis, which is in the far north. It's the furthest northwestern point of the British Isles. And there's this incredible event where every 19 years, the moon rises over a mountain called Sleeping Beauty. She's like the form of a woman, and you look over from the huge Callanish standing stones over a loch to this incredible form of a female mountain, and every 19 years the moon rises and goes across the top of her body. And I've seen also on TV that there's a site somewhere in America that also lines up with this, somewhere in a desert, and there's these two like pillars of rock, and this 19-year cycle places the moon like right in the middle of them. So I guess all over the world, because this happens every 19 years, that there may be sacred sites in different parts of the world that actually line up. I'm going to France around the time in June where it happens in Scotland, but it could happen any time this year. It really would depend where the sacred site was. So in this 19-year cycle, it's quite interesting that the moon returns to its exact position. So for the whole year, the new moons, the full moons will be in exactly the same degree of the zodiac as they were 19 years ago. And so that was 2006 was the time it last happened. So this 19-year cycle started with the wolf moon in January. And I know that was a really powerful moon for me, and I couldn't figure out why. But sitting here one evening, I saw the moon rise over the sea, like really bright orange. And I knew it was a wolf moon. And this was part of this kind of calling to really follow the moon this year. So it's wonderful. It is a special year for the moon. So if there's ever a year to follow the moon cycle, this Metonic year is a really good year to do it. And the moon, you know, can help us be more intuitive. It can help us go into our subconscious dreaming, feeling, surrealist artist kind of being. Yeah, so I'm really feeling the calling to this moon in a big way. Okay, I think that's it. So, hey, I managed to do that in half an hour. Yay. So what I'm going to do now is stop the recording. If you're watching this later on YouTube and you'd like to join this group, it meets every Monday. There's all kinds of other things go on, like daily meditation. It's basically astrology, gene keys, kundalini yoga. So you join up as a subscription from $39 a month, and then you get access to everything on the platform, including the astrology class. So I'll put the link in under the YouTube, and there's also be a link to Milena's website. You can go and have a look at her work and also support her as an artist as well, which would be wonderful. Okay, I'm going to stop the recording now.